Okay. Well, then overall, how do you feel about the story? Since we both seem to have issues engaging with it, have you been able to follow it? Because I stopped paying attention.
Um, sort of, light versus dark. Peter
Yeah.
Dinklage's horrible voice acting. Um,
I was led to believe that his voice acting was a lot worse than I experienced, but I'm still not going to say it's particularly good. I feel like he's just as mystified by what in the script as we
yes,
are.
he's confused by what he's saying. He often sounds bored by the content of what he's
Definitely
saying.
bored.
I'm not sure what context he was or wasn't given. It makes me wonder at what stage he recorded the lines during. Like if it was so early in pre-production that not even Bungie really knew what they were doing, and so it's like, well, if your director doesn't know what they're
Well, they're
directing,
directing.
yeah, who or why, that part of it seems like a mess. The whole writing and the backstory and whatnot. One of the things that has me most excited right now in regards to Destiny's plot is the murmurings online that I don't know if you notice that when you play the game and you kill a certain amount of enemies, you start unlocking these things called grimoires, and you can go on to Bungie.net and look at these grimoires. They're essentially, if you think of them as like digital playing cards, one side of the card has an image of something,
right.
whether it's an enemy or a location, and you flip the card around by clicking on it, and you have backstory about the enemy or the location and things like that. And through these grimoires, people are, and I don't know if this is spoilery, maybe if it is, fast forward 2 minutes or so, people are speculating that it's sort of one of those plot twisty storylines where later on in the history of Destiny, Bungie's going to unveil that we sort of are kind of like the bad guys in the grand scheme of the universe, and that's why we are the Warlock and the Titan and the Hunter, whereas the quote unquote enemies that we're battling are actually the Knights and the Wizards, and these, which doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of having like fighting goblins and hobgoblins, but there are generally good guy quote unquote like enemies that we're fighting and stuff like that, whereas like kind of like they think that we are the darkness, we are this undead army resurrected in the beginning of the game that are actually, and that we don't know what we're doing, that we're under some sort of like manipulation. And if there is a twist like that, I think that's really cool in the grand scheme of this universe that Bungie is crafting. However, the way of which they've chosen to deliver it is not at all compelling.
No. Also, that doesn't seem to fit for a massively multiplayer online game. Like that sort of twist has like a definite narrative arc and semi-conclusion. Like in a game that supposedly has longevity to it, that they expect people to be playing together for a long time, and even though like you start to just slough off the story at a certain point and just play the missions because it's fun to shoot things in this game. Then the story definitely disappears because you've got this great twist, and then you realize that, oh, you've been the enemy all along, and then you go, but I'm still going to keep playing.
Yeah.
and it immediately becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, I was saying that I hope in the grand scheme of this, if they do go with something like this, like that idea, I really hope it's not a good guy, bad guy, light and dark thing. If they are going to do it, I really hope that there's definitely some gray territory in there. Kind of like your ideas about how they could have made the worlds in this game better or more engaging. I thought it would be cool, like if they do go with a plot twisty idea like that, and we are going to have to choose to become light or dark or something more in between. I really hope that they do stuff with the abilities. Like it'd be cool if you unlocked light abilities or dark abilities or gray abilities, depending on what you were. And at the same time, all of this is just speculation. They could have had no plans like that. Yeah. People could be experiencing this really uninteresting, unengaging storyline and then dreaming up their own concoctions about how this could be, like way cooler than it's actually going to play out. And
honestly, oftentimes that is the case.
Yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, I think I don't know that the storyline's unimaginative. To be honest, the storyline, or hypothetically what the storyline was going to be, was one of the things that got me really interested in wanting to play the game. Like you said, like we said earlier, being burnt out on first-person shooters, and like generally when I play any game, I play for its promise of telling me a great story. And so I looked at Destiny and what little I knew about it, and I looked at this story of like Earth and a battle a long time ago in this orb called the Traveler, appearing above the planet, and it was like the last defense in this intergalactic invasion scheme, and kind of like now we are these guardians sent out to like collect and retrieve information regarding this great battle that took place against darkness. And I was like, that sounds cool. That sounds like science fiction steeped in lore that's actually been like thought out and planned, and not necessarily something I've partook in yet. And the weird thing was, while I started playing Destiny for the storyline, I ended up playing it purely for its gameplay in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, funny thing about the lore, though. The story, regardless of how similar or how different it is from, say, Halo, I feel like the enemy structure is the same.
Yeah, it is.
You've got your quote-unquote humans, and then you've got one group of enemies, let's say they're the Covenant, and then you've got a third group of enemies, which is like the Fallen or the Flood, right? So it feels like they still have their like 3 levels of, it's not races, but they're ethnicities, but...
Sort of. Well, I mean, you mind if I interject here real quick?
No, go for it.
Okay, so at first it seemed like that to me, and largely it may be like this 3-tier structure, but I think they recognized that early on, that that's what people were going to see or what was going to happen. And so, like, now you do have, okay, so in the grand scheme of the lore that's been presented right now, you have, let's say the Traveler is its own thing, but then you have the human race, you have the Fallen race, which is kind of like the Dark Elf human race, and then you have the Exo, which is kind of like the cyborg race. That's what my Titan is. And then outside of that, for the bad guys, you do have the Fallen in like their different community and like their hierarchy. Then you have like the Vex, which is like the robot class. And then you have the Hive also with like all of their things. And then when you get to Mars, you have, I don't even know what they're called. They're kind of like the big brutish race of whoever they are. So enemy-wise, there's the Vex, there's the Fallen, there's the Hive, and then there's whatever the ones on like there's Mars. So there's like 4 different types of enemy races, each with their own classes, like within that, to battle against.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I just haven't gotten that far. I definitely didn't get to Mars.
Okay. Yeah, there's another one. So like besides the Fallen and the robots and the Hive, like they're there too. They're interesting.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start wrapping it up.
Yeah.
What is the longevity of the game?
As I see it, or as Bungie sees it? Bungie said that they're going to support it for 10 years. Is what they said. They have a 10-year plan in place and I could be wrong, but I don't think that meant like the Destiny franchise. They make it sound like you buy this game, and see, I don't imagine how this can be. They kind of, I took it as you buy Destiny, and through patches and daily events and weekly events and monthly events and DLC, that you're going to be able to experience this in some form for 10 years. However, 10 years is a really long time, so I can't really imagine that within 10 years there's not going to be a full-blown sequel or a third part that makes a trilogy, unless they are doing like $30 to $40 expansion packs that you just
I believe there is already an expansion pack set for December.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it comes with, but I think I read that also.
Yeah, and I think it's $30.
Okay, interesting. Right now I'm really into it. Like I said, it made me do what I've literally never done for any first-person shooter ever, and that was try to kind of create my own version of a space. I created the clan and created the Facebook group surrounding the clan, and just making a space for friends that I have, and in some cases we have, where we can bond together and talk about what's going on in the game and what we're experiencing and what kind of loot we've gathered. And I really like that, despite all the game's flaws and the storyline and whatnot, there is kind of like a mystery in the way that the game works. Like last night, I found out that you cap off at 25,000 currency in the game, and like nobody that I knew that. Like, yeah, you better buy stuff in the game because sooner or later you're going to get to the point where you can't carry any money around.
More money.
Yeah, and like so far, since the first day that I've been playing the game, so like about a week and a half now or so, approaching 2 weeks, every single time I've gone onto the game, something new has been happening, whether it was because of progression I was making as a character or something Bungie was supplying us with. Like I said, literally when you're level 20, every single day you turn the game on, there is a new version of a mission to do. And you're going to have those group of people who complain like, well, I've already done that mission. Like, this is boring. I'm just doing the same things over and over again. And I totally get that, and I can see how that type of experience isn't for everybody. But at least at this early point for me, even though I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like having Peter Dinklage go hack this computer while a satellite opens up in the background, which I did early on in the game, except this time the enemies are level 20 and they do more melee damage than they did the last time I did this mission. And I might get blue drops and I might get a purple drop. Like, I'm still really enjoying that aspect of the game. On top of like the MMO aspects, the whole you know, like as I complete missions, I get reputation points for whatever faction I choose to be a part of. And when I get more reputation for that faction, I level up, and when I level up that reputation, I can buy exclusive armor and weapons that like other people who didn't choose to spend their time this way don't have access to. And then I can take those armor and weapons, which at level 20, armor and weapons are the only things that will make you be level 21, 22. Like, I'm level 24 right now in spirit, even though your character maxes out at level 20.
Okay, so there's no level progression past 20. It's all equipment based at that point.
It's all equipment based combined with, well, yeah, okay. And by equipment based, I guess one thing we didn't touch upon, which we probably should have, was that high level equipment in the game, green and above, green, blue, purple, and orange, in that order. Your experience points start going towards leveling up your damage or like ability modifiers on your weapons, crafting components that you find in the world and you get as quest rewards go towards leveling up that type of equipment also. So you're still doing that. When you hit level 20 in the game, you get the ability to earn something called light points on your armor, and your light points across all of your armor pools together towards further leveling up your character. And that's how you eventually, yes, get to be level 21 through, I don't know if I've seen anyone higher than level 28 right now, because light points are essentially making your weapons and armor more powerful, which is what gives you the ability to survive these high-level raids. Another thing worth noting is that even though the level cap is at level 20, at level 20, you're not going to be anywhere near maxing out all of the abilities for all of your characters. For example, last night I just reached level 24 on my Titan, and I had just then, at level 24, at, what did I say, approximately, we'll say 45-ish, 50 hours into the game, maxed out my Defender subclass. I still, even at 50 hours into the game, have to go all the way through 2/3 of my Striker subclass and all the way 100% of the way through whatever that third class is that I'm not even familiar with. So it's like, for people who fall in love with the gameplay that is offered in the game, there's a lot of content there. However, I'm just going to keep going if you don't mind while I'm on a roll, and then we can get your final thoughts on it. For example, the Wednesday or Thursday after I got the game, I went into work and I was talking to my boss, who's also a gamer. I didn't realize, though, that he's more of a single-player gamer, I think. I don't think he's got like even a handful of friends on the PlayStation Network that he plays with. He might. And I raved about the game and just how cool I thought it was and how much I was into it and whatnot. And he sent me a text a couple nights ago, saying like, "Oh, I finally got it," and he said, "But I feel like I'm missing something." He said, like, "Why can't I talk to people while I'm playing?" And that overall the experience felt very slow and very lonely to him, despite, bumping into the random other real players that you run into in the world and stuff like that. And I felt really bad all of a sudden. I was like, oh my gosh, I guess that if you're like a single player first person shooter fan that wants to play a game like purely for kind of like its storyline combined with like clever gameplay ideas and stuff like that, this is probably not the game for you. It's a straight up shooter. Like the single player is multiplayer, is meant to be multiplayer, and the multiplayer is definitely meant to be multiplayer. And the game is best served with at least one other real life friend. And later on, when you start getting into the endgame content, the game is going to be best served with a guild or a clan. And so if you're not into multiplayer gaming, or like what MMOs are in spirit, which is kind of like this giant conglomerate of / hive mind of people pooling together time and energy to complete tasks that developers are giving you on like a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, then it's probably not the game for you. And like I said, I felt bad for recommending it to him, not knowing those things. And
yeah.
So I enjoy the game. I recognize it for all the flaws that you and I discussed, both aesthetically, musically, and all these other things. I said, however, despite it, it's a game that, at least right now, I'm coming back to every single day. I think it's incredibly fun. You're right, it is very Halo, and that's what I love about it. I wish it was a little bit more Borderlands, more Mass Effect in that the RPG elements, and I wish it was more Fallout / Skyrim in the way those games present their world and the characters in them and the amount of things that you can do in them. This game could be a heck of a lot better, and I hope that over time, over this supposed 10-year plan they have, that it gets a heck of a lot better, because, like you were saying, it could just be so much better. I just think it is really fun right now, and so I recommend it on the basis that you have a lot of other people to play with. Yeah.
Sure.